I wanted to pick something up with you, John, actually, and that was something that I've looked in for many years, and it's so sort of prominent, the investigation. It's even being relaunched now, and that is Madeleine McCann.
Mm-hmm.
What? And I mean, I looked into the case. There's obviously a Netflix documentary going on, and that's very it's full of information that points towards the parents not being involved.
Well, that's a lie.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to get
My opinion.
your 2 cents on it. Yeah.
My opinion is, my opinion. Again,
Of course.
Live, the mother is responsible, and the father's involved as well. I did have an insider, a very good insider on that inquiry. And she actually referred to mother as having eyes like a shark, very, very cold. I'd heard that they were all swingers. That's what I'd heard.
Really?
That the whole lot were swingers. And that, if ever they committed an autopsy on Madeleine, they would have clearly signed, because it's a child and it's an unexplained death, it would have been called what's a special post-mortem. So it'd be an SPM, not a normal autopsy. So a post-mortem is if you can't ascertain the death or there's no professional present. So if you've got cancer and you die in hospital, then there'll be no post-mortem. That's how it'll be. But, anything else, if you're found dead at home and there's no one present, then a post-mortem will take place. And if you've got underlying health issues, that will be prominent, and that will usually be the cause of death. Now, if it's a bit more unexplained, there's a suspicion in there, a special post-mortem takes place. Now, I've sat in on many of these. I used to be the exhibits officer on these. They're horrible things. Again, with Satanists, how they end up having sex with dead bodies and eating dead bodies. My God, you cut open the intestinal cavity and you smell what comes out of our bodies. It's the most wretched stench, and and that's a freshly dead person, I mean, you imagine what it's like when someone's fermented. It's an appalling smell. It makes, for me, I would be sick straight away.
So what do you...
Well,
sorry,
coming
go
back
on,
to
sorry,
that,
John, carry on.
Coming back to that, with the McCann case, if they had have ever conducted a special post-mortem on that body, maybe that young girl would have shown signs of sexual abuse, So hence the reason probably why they couldn't. I heard that the mother was medicating the little girl, and that there was sexual abuse within that group. The best thing I ever saw regarding that was the documentary that Richard D. Hall did called Embedded Confessions, where they actually had the brilliant guy, and I vouch for this fellow. His name's Peter Hyatt. I sort of know Peter, but he is a statement analyst, and I've worked with similar to himself. I worked with a guy, his first name was Joe, in the police, and he was a statement analyst. He was a profiler, highly accurate way of analysing it. And what they do is they just go for how we structure our words and things like that. And he analyses both the statements of Jerry and Kate, and his findings, are unbelievable. He categorically states that that child was murdered. He come to the same conclusion I'm saying, that the child was heavily medicated. He's saying that the mother was the medicator, because bear in mind they're both doctors, and she was an anaesthetist, yeah. And that he is a paedophile, and he says that Jerry McCann shows signs of psychopathy and paedophilia. And you hear many things. Now, what really upset me about that case was the fact that there was some irrefutable evidence, and one of them was the cadaver dog that was brought out there. And this dog was the best that the police had. The dog picked up a dead body scent, and then he picked up the scent in the car and from the toy as well. So it picked up Madeleine's scent and the dead body scent and everything else. So it clearly shows that there was a conveyance of the body. The body was moved. The dog can't lie, and that's that, So there was a need to discredit. Again, we're coming back to the information stands on its own, so they've got to attack the source of it. So Kate McCann, again, you look at all the spin doctrine around these two, there was a huge effort to discredit the dog handler and the dog.
That's right, yeah.
And they succeeded, yet the FBI went on to employ this dog and this dog handler, But the sad thing about this was a few years prior to that, there was an investigation into a care home in Jersey called Haute de la Garenne. And there was allegations that children weren't just raped, they were tortured. There was satanic ritual abuse was going on. There was ritualistic abuse. Kids were taken into a basement area. They were tortured and they were killed and they were raped. Some got out, many didn't, right? So they were told excavate. They filled in, whoever had filled in with builder's rubble, this basement area and mud to try and damage everything. And bear in mind, water destroys evidence. Water destroys DNA. Well, you know, you chuck a body in the water, and you know, I worked on the River Thames for a couple of years with the police there, and they can never determine how bodies are murdered, killed, or whatever.
Well, once they're in the water, the DNA goes, it's untraceable.
Yeah, untraceable. And the bodies blow out and they pop and all sorts of things happen. It just mutilates everything in the water, and boats hit them and all that. They never ever determined. One guy was found with a trolley jack wrapped around his neck and his hands tied behind his back, and that went down as a murder. And there was quite a few people would end up in the Thames that were sex offenders. So however that happened, suicide or not, I don't know. I mean, I'm not advocating anything like that, but water. You know, water is a way of, and that's that. And there's a lot of parasites in water that will feed on it, will feast on the body, So, so this basement was flooded with all sorts of wet mud and water and rubble and all that. And so the guy who took on the investigation came from the mainland, came from Strathclyde Police, but he was in the Metropolitan Police. And a good friend of mine, a guy called Lenny Harper, a detective, high-ranking man, very few good high-ranking guys, and he's one of them. And he took this job on, and there was bullying beyond bullying to shut this man up. And fingers were pointed at the Bale Hack brothers, who were the administrators of the island, Frank Walker, who's in charge of the islands, and there was all fingers were pointing at these people. And Jersey's very weird because, and this does tie in with the McCanns, Jersey has a thing called the honorary police. Jersey works under feudal law. It predates anything. It's land ownership, right? So the landowners' children are entitled to become police officers if they want without training. So, and you can't tell the difference between an honorary policeman and a normal policeman.
That's crazy.
Yep. And they have access to the radios. They get warrant cars and they can drive the cars. They can arrest prisoners. And Lenny said there was one guy who was working with who'd actually had a conviction for rape.
What?
And he was an honorary copper. Yeah. So what happened was Lenny turned around and said, right, we need this basement excavated. So they had an anthropologist, an archaeologist, and a cadaver dog, which was that cadaver dog, right? So they, layer by layer, like an episode from Time Team, they scraped away. They found manacles, handcuffs, they found blood, they found the bath that the kids were butchered in, and it was all there, right? He'd done a Rolls Royce job, but again, what happened? Lenny Harper got attacked, trolled and attacked. We're seeing a pattern here. We see the same pattern all the time. Anyone who stands up and speaks out bravely about child abuse, you watch them get attacked. And
So why did they... Sorry, carry on.
Well, what happened was, because Kate McCann then denigrated and discredited the good works of this dog, right? What's that saying? No good deed goes unpunished. So true, so true. It also then, they went retrospective. They don't do it with judges who let off a paedophile, or a judge who gets done for paedophilia, then look back on all his previous sort of... adjudications, but they do it when it's one of the good guys, So all of a sudden, Haute de Garenne is discredited and shut down. Yeah, so all them children that were murdered, they found bone. This is how far they go. They found bone. That dog, that superb little spaniel dog that Kate McCann had to deliberately rubbish. Shame on that woman. But you know what? She'll go to her grave, man. And her God ain't our God.
Do you think that'll ever come out?
No. I think maybe she'll break. You can see she's tormented. Him, no, because he looks wretched. But you can see it's hurting her. He hasn't changed a bit.
No.
She is rotting. She is rotting. You know, you can see it in her.
Because Sonia Poulton come out, the journalist, and said that the German guy that they're investigating is a complete bluff.
Well, it's a nonsense. It's all a nonsense. It's her, you know, and him, in my opinion, you know. But what's happened is, with this thing in Hotograph, that dog found the bone, right? They got this bone, right? Now, cadaver dogs, they're trained to sniff out. There's only two things that smell the same, and that's pork and human flesh. We are so DNA compatible with a pig, it's frightening.
Yeah.
This is why these religions don't eat pork. It got nothing to do with being clean meat. The worst meat you can eat is chicken and duck. You ask any farmer, poultry farmer, a lot of them won't touch chicken. You know, the rest of the world, you know, the Rastas don't eat pork, the Islamics don't eat pork, the Sikhs don't eat pork, boom, 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 boom. But it's a nonsense. Pork ain't dirty, right? Chicken and geese and ducks are dirty, but we're compatible. Every organ in a pig works in us, right? So the dog can't tell the difference between a pig and a human. But the thing is, with human, we've got collagen. We've got collagen on our bones. Yep. So the anthropologist got this bone, and anthropology is the study of bones and everything else. He said that is a human bone. The dogs confirmed it. I confirm it. That's got collagen on it, and it's an infant femur between this age. So she said between 10 and 5. That, you know, bang. That's her evidence. Gets bagged up, and there's a bit of skull, and off they go to the laboratory. Where they get then analysed by an expert, and then they do a forensic statement and they send it back, and it's usually beyond refute. You know, it's usually cannot be contradicted, and it goes off, but it comes back, and they have a unique seal reference number. A ratchet strap goes over it, and it'll have this unique seal, a bit like a pound note, no £2 notes. The bag comes back, right, with this report. Different bag. The ratchet seal number's the same, different ratchet seal, different make, but the same number. Impossible. It's impossible. It don't happen, right?
Just shows. And
they've turned around and they said, we've analysed it, it's coconut shell. You know, and of course then with that, and with Kate McCann doing what she's done, Haute de Grain shuts down. So the ramifications aren't just with her little daughter.
Did you know about the Clement Floyd story? Because, you know, Clement Floyd was he
was out there, wasn't
and
he?
he hosted them for dinner 2 weeks after that Madeleine went missing, and he was a prolific paedophile.
And he did piece of work on a 4-year-old child and the orgasm. You know, and these people, and of course you got his son was an MP, wasn't he? And is I think a barrister. You know, you got Sigmund Freud and Clement Freud, and you know
he was involved with Cyril Smith. Clement Freud.
I mean, it's just it's unbelievable. You know, and I mean this has come out in the government inquiry. They've just had the Lord Janner inquiry, and of course Janner got away with it because he was classed as a good Jew. You know, and again, this is no slur on any denomination, but because he was like a Nazi hunter, but he was just a massive, prolific paedophile. And his son, Daniel Janner, did his best to try and, you know, discredit the witness. Did his best, you know, to the point they put this poor witness under surveillance, you know, who was very sick, very ill. And this witness...
And that's the tactics they use.
Oh, just vile. And they use their privilege and their power and their position.